Hello and welcome to this very special broadcast, Chandrayaan 3, the big mission of India, and it's on its way to completion, a successful completion on which a billion plus hopes are riding right now. It has completed critical maneuvers already, and on 23rd of August, India has a date with the moon. Chandrayaan 3, which was launched on the 14th of July, is set to make history when it lands on the south side of the moon in a few days from now. It's a historic moment. Now, Chandrayaan 3 lander will begin its final descent to make touchdown on the moon a little after 5 p.m. on Wednesday. The landing is most crucial as that's when we failed during the Chandrayaan 2 mission. But ISRO this time has learned from its mistakes. The scientists have kept a backup for everything. They're hoping for the best, and so are we. The Vikram lander module of the spacecraft carrying Chandrayaan rover inside successfully detached from the propulsion module on Thursday and is now inching closer to the lunar surface. Now, a billion plus hopes, as I said, are riding on the mission to explore the dark side of the moon. As I said earlier, the southern side of the moon is the side which has not been explored so much. There are mysteries which scientists claim should be unraveled as we get closer to that side of the moon. As we talk about this historic space expedition that India has undertaken and is set to be completed very, very soon, here's a special report about the journey so far. Have a look.
अभी पुष्टि की गई चंद्रयान 3 को प्रमोशन की कक्षा प्राप्त कर ली गई है.
Chandrayaan 3 satellite separated.
It's officially the last phase of Chandrayaan 3's historic journey to the lunar South Pole.
Chandrayaan 3 has attained a major milestone successfully.
The Vikram lander successfully separated from the rest of the spacecraft and its propulsion module, bringing it a step closer for soft landing on the 23rd of August. The separation of the lander represents a pinnacle moment in India's space endeavours. From here on, the lander will go on a solo journey till it can touch down on the lunar surface. The onboard instruments will be activated and validated over the next few days. The lander and rover are equipped with scientific payloads to conduct vital experiments on the moon. ISRO will conduct complex braking maneuvers of the lander. This will essentially lower Chandrayaan 3 to a 100-kilometer circular orbit and thereby bring it closer to the moon. It is from this strategic orbit that the lander is slated to initiate its final descent on the 23rd of August. The home stretch has been described by the ISRO chief as 15 minutes of terror. That's when the lander has to fire its engines at the right times and the right altitude while using just the right amount of fuel and making accurate scans of the lunar surface before finally touching down. When at the 30 kilometers altitude, the lander begins to use its thrusters to navigate down to the surface. This is referred to as the powered braking phase. While the thrusters help in keeping the lander from crashing, the lander reorients itself to a 90 degrees for a safe landing. Then at around 100 meters altitude, the lander scans the lunar surface looking for any obstacles. If there are none, it will begin a slow descent. The thrusters will keep firing till touchdown. After landing, the Chandrayaan rover will be released to study the lunar surface. The six-wheeled vehicle has instruments configured with payloads to provide data related to the moon's surface. It will gather data and analyze the chemical composition of the lunar surface, the rocks and the soil. While maneuvering across the lunar terrain, the rover will perform critical in-situ chemical analysis of the lunar surface. It has a mission life of 1 lunar day or 14 Earth days.
The journey that Chandrayaan as a program and Chandrayaan 3 in particular has been extremely one that makes every Indian proud. We have certainly demonstrated to the world, ISRO has, and the whole ecosystem around ISRO in design, manufacturing, that we are amongst the leading nations in the world in terms of this type of capability. And I'm very pleased today that Chandrayaan 3 has completed the separation phase successfully, and I hope that we will soon be browsing the surface of the moon. It adds to the deep technology capabilities, it adds to the confidence of our nation and it certainly positions India and the young Indians that to be a central player in the decade of technology opportunities that are coming in front of us. The decade, as the Honorable Prime Minister has branded it, that in that decade, space and space-linked technologies are going to be a very important part of the technology ecosystem, and that the Indian ecosystem in space and allied technologies will play a defining role there.
As the nation eagerly awaits the outcome of this complex operation, the world watches with bated breath for Chandrayaan 3 to etch a new chapter in lunar exploration. With its sights set on the moon's southern territory, India is poised to go where no nation has gone before, the dark side of the moon.
Well, the dark side of the moon that will be lit with our quest for knowledge and thirst to figure out more what exactly the southern side of the moon is really about. More importantly, what are the mysteries that lie in that part of the moon that has remained unexplored so far. Let's tell you one by one about the key things that we are looking out for, and more importantly, how these various maneuvers done by Chandrayaan 3 are going to play a very, very important role. Well, you already know that happy separation has already happened. That separation was a critical part of that entire space expedition, which is all set to complete its journey on the 23rd of August. Now, we are looking at various other facets. The module is now on a separate journey, and these are separate journeys both the parts are going to take. The separation of the module in the orbit was very, very important. It had to happen. And also, the lander is on its most critical journey at this point in time. As the touchdown, as we look forward to that very crucial touchdown that must happen, Vikram is carrying Pragyan, which attempts the landing, which hopefully will be a very successful soft landing. This is an attempt to soft land on the southern side of the moon, which I said is a mystery to the space scientists and something that the entire world and the space scientists are trying to figure out. It's a series of complex maneuvers which need to be done in different gravitational situations. The speed with which the soft landing will happen needs to be controlled with utmost precision. And as the experts have been pointing out, ISRO this time has created a backup for everything. Just in case something goes wrong, we've learned from our mistakes of Chandrayaan 2. Talking more about that touchdown, the rover named Pragyan will roll off the lander, and these are crucial steps that we talk as we look forward to that landing. Pragyan also explores the nearby lunar area. As for any space mission, even for this one, the crucial part would be what kind of knowledge sharing, data sharing, what kind of images can be sent in to understand what exactly the southern side of the moon is really, really about. The images that will be, gathered, they'll be sent back to Earth. Of course, they'll be sent back to ISRO. And that's how most space missions work. That's the normal trajectory. That's exactly what Chandrayaan 3 is going to do. Let's move to another set of information that we present to you through these special graphics that we are putting out. The deboosting maneuver is equally very, very important. It's a critical step before Vikram's soft landing on the southern side of the moon. And it may sound very simple, but as I said, it's a series of complex maneuvers that need to be done with utmost precision to ensure that the mission is successful. Every microsecond has been planned by the space scientists to ensure that this goes right this time. The lander to slow down to enter the elliptical orbit. This is part of the deboosting maneuver. The positions lander is closer to the moon. It positions the lander closer to the moon. And going forward, the closest point to the moon will be about 30 kilometers. That's exactly the position which we are looking out for. How exactly this process was completed, what exactly Chandrayaan 3 mission was all about, the number of days it took, the kind of budget it took, more importantly, the time, the human hours, and the grit and determination of the scientists who were responsible for this project to be completed is yet another non-technical aspect which is not so much spoken about. But yes, that's the most important part of the project, because on the success of this mission, our hopes are dependent, and for the scientists, it's the years of hard work and research that they have really done. So, as we said, the farthest point for lander to be about 100 kilometers, the closest was about 30 kilometers, and lander to undergo 2 orbital reduction moves. These are all part of the deboosting maneuver. For you and me, people who don't understand science or the space exploration so much, all this is a learning experience. To understand about the deboosting maneuver, to understand about these critical steps which must be undertaken for any kind of soft landing to happen successfully. Let's move on. Let's tell you about another set of information that we have for you as we look forward to that big day and we talk about these maneuvers that need to be completed. India's mission moon, Chandrayaan 3. How critical, how important it is for all of us. I don't need to reiterate that. But it took a budget of over 600 crores. About 615 crore rupees was spent on this mission. By the standards of the world and the kind of budget various competitive agencies, say for NASA or in Russia, have, this is not a huge budget. These are limited resources for space exploration. About 42 days, that's the journey, and the rover's life is about 14 days, and that's the distance that you can see already on your screens. That's the broad data and statistics that we can present to you as far as Chandrayaan 3 is concerned. So the facet that I was talking about, which is the human work and the human hours that have been spent to make this a reality. In the next few hours, in the next few minutes, we'll tell you more about what exactly Chandrayaan 3 mission is about, how critical the next few days are going to be, and what learnings have been really taken as far as Chandrayaan 2 and the failure of the last critical step is concerned. So the distance covered is about 3.84 lakh kilometers and the budget of about 615 crore rupees. Those are the broad figures that we present to you as far as Chandrayaan 3 is concerned. Let's also bring in the experts into the discussion. Let's also ask the experts that these maneuvers, we've tried to decode them, we've tried to explain that to you outside the technicalities, what exactly do they mean, but how critical and complicated this procedure really is. And if we have to ensure that this procedure is completed without any problems, what would it take for this mission to be completed? Chandrayaan 2, there were a lot of learnings from Chandrayaan 2. The mission could not succeed the way it wanted to. It failed at the last step. And that learning has been taken. Joining us on the broadcast is Dr. P.K. Ghosh, former space scientist. He's with us on the broadcast. He's with us in the studio. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you in person on the broadcast today. Demystified for us. I've spoken about a lot of technical things, the deboosting maneuver, the steps that need to be completed. But the next few days, the next few hours, how critical and important they are.
Each move is very critical and important, and I cannot really specify that this is more important than the other. As you know, the lander separated from the propulsion module, and that was a very crucial thing, but that had been proved earlier. Now the entire focus is on the soft landing, and this time there are a lot of changes, and let me mention that the changes are not only in the machine or the flight of the spacecraft, that is, changes are in the mindsets. The earlier times, the idea of putting Chandrayaan 2 was that we were geared for the success. So we would go ahead with the experiments. Now the mindset is we have to show the world that, look, this is our capability to land on the moon, on the south side of the moon. So there is a change in thinking. We have got an enhanced redundancy factor. We have got plan A, plan B. We have made the entire landing process a lot more automated. If you remember that 15 minutes of terror which was there last time, well, I don't know if the 15 minutes of terror are going to be there, because now we have allowed the lander to take its own decisions.
Okay. No, but what does that mean, that lander takes its own decision?
Yeah, exactly. Earlier, what was, why was it a terrifying thing? Partially, of course there were other things, partially, that was because you couldn't control anything. You had told the lander that, look, it was pre-fed and the lander would do certain steps or the SOPs and then go on land. Now, the difference is that we have told the lander, look, you search for this area. Earlier it was just 500 to 500 meters.
Yeah.
Now it's 2 into 4.5 kilometers, which is it gives them a lot of wriggling room, if I may say so, flexibility. So it's told the lander that, look, you search for an area, there is an alternate area, you go and land. Now, one of the main things which I think I must mention is, you're showing this, the graphics of how the lander is coming vertically. Now, one of the biggest difficulties is, you can imagine it is coming at a phenomenal speed, more than 6,300 kilometers per hour or so, into 10, into 30 kilometers. And as you mentioned, 30 kilometers it starts. So it's coming horizontally. After that, it has got to change into a vertical motion. It's got to land vertically. It can't land horizontally.
Right.
So you've got to change not only the motion of the lander from horizontal to vertical, it's also got to land. So now come back, you just put your hand, you see how difficult it is to change the orientation. And then it's got to land. Now what have we done? Redundancy. Suppose if the algorithm fails, for whatever reason, I know it won't, but suppose if it does, there is a redundancy factor.
Yeah.
So you see how much we have changed. I have been told, I don't know whether it's true, that even if one of the legs
Yeah,
break,
you said that before. They have another leg,
yeah,
just to make sure.
I don't know. They have strengthened the legs to 1 meter per second more, shock that it can bear.
Sir, I've positive time, but you've spoken about this earlier. I want you to touch upon this again. The 15 minutes of horror, or what could not go successful with Chandrayaan 2. We say it vaguely when we say we have a backup for everything, right? But there was a particular technical error that happened or could not happen as it was planned. What have we done to fix that error? And if I were to ask you as a layperson to explain it to me or to our viewers, could you break it down for us?
Well, firstly, the entire thing was analyzed very closely. And of course, not that it was disseminated, but all steps were taken to ensure that that does not occur again. The algorithms were checked, rechecked, re-rechecked, and they were tested. And like I said, there is a redundancy factor. Suppose if something goes wrong, that is, something fails. I'm just taking a hypothetical situation.
Yes.
There is a backup for it. So now you have a situation in which, if there is, earlier there were no backups. We had assumed, that's what I was saying, we were ready for success. Now we are ready to see there is no failure. There's a big change in thinking.
It's a change of approach, it's a change of demeanor, and
Absolutely.
perhaps the energy with which we are working towards this mission.
Absolutely.
We're not keeping finger crossed. We are very confident, we are very positive that this is going to be a huge and a grand success this time. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for sharing your perspective, for sharing your time with us here on CNN News 18. On the other side of a very quick break, we get you the key newsmakers, the key voices, not just you and me, the entire government, politicians, every person in this country is eyeing this event very, very closely and keenly. Up next, on the other side, far more voices slipping into a very short break for now.